Squirm Squad, deploy for Part 14.
You know the drill, ready to roll.
Yeah, we've done this so often. I won't be surprised if like
Don't
Pedro
cut the
can get
fridge,
introduced to the
Pedro.
parts.
Indiana Jones may be hiding in that fridge.
Alright, maybe Harrison Ford might be hiding in there. You never know.
I can't wait to see how they're going to
that's
get even.
just for love interest of the protagonists.
You know, I cannot wait to see how crazy they're gonna get with Indiana Jones 5.
I don't know. He'll probably to avoid the Earth blowing up, he'll hide in a well.
I just want the movie to be go back to the style of the original 3 instead of whatever the fuck the 4th movie was trying to do.
I don't think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is necessarily an abomination. I think
I don't think it's abomination either. It's just that it feels more like a 50s alien invasion movie than an actual Indiana Jones movie. That's my problem.
I mean, considering how much time had happened in real life, trying to do the 30s with like nearly 60-year-old Harrison Ford probably wouldn't have been a very good idea.
Well, maybe that's in that case. Maybe that should have been their clue. That they should have just left it alone at a trilogy.
I don't know, Pedro. Having Shia LaBeouf as the actual protagonist would have been even scarier as a thought.
Okay.
No. Oh, no. What I mean is not do a 4th movie. Period. Not do any more movies.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Period.
I agree on that actually.
I mean, I could see what.
How the 3rd movie had such an awesome conclusive ending and everything.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The 3rd movie is definitely my favorite of the trilogy, but I'm not quite sure I'd call it
Honestly,
ultimately conclusive in the sense like, well, it means that there's absolutely nowhere to go from there. I mean, yeah, it was a nice.
In a movie format, maybe, Jova, but LucasArts understood this, and I agree that the franchisation. No. But the franchisation of Indiana Jones works better at continuing through video games instead, because in that way you don't have to recast Harrison Ford constantly as he's growing up, and instead you can have these adventures that are spruced again across the timeline, so you can have the exclusive movies that are still set. Either in between, the 1st and the 3rd, or between the 2nd and the 1st, stuff like that, without having to, show Harrison Ford aging and all.
I don't really have, other than that though, I don't really have an opinion on any of the other Indiana Jones films because I've only ever really seen the 1st one. I've seen bits and pieces of the others, and judging from what I've seen, I'm not really looking forward to the 2nd one.
The 3rd one is definitely the best in my opinion. As for the 2nd one, I wouldn't say the 2nd one is bad per se. It's just that it is probably the weakest of the trilogy.
Yeah, typically is the weakest of the trilogy, if anything, because the one was fucking annoying. However, the thing is, but there's still a lot of cool stuff in it. That scene where the dude rips up the other dude's heart, that's one of the best effects I've ever seen.
Hardcore.
Although it's interesting you say that because the writers of that film also wrote Howard the Duck.
Not everyone's perfect.
The thing with Howard the Duck's plot is probably the last of its problems.
And I think they also did.
Himself.
I think they also did the film Best Defense, a film that was so bad that they cut half the movie out that was supposed to star Dudley Moore and replaced it with a different film with Eddie Murphy in it.
For the record, by the way, Howard the Duck was a movie made for kids, mind you.
Yes, and it contains a scene of animal furry nudity.
Yes, literal duck boobs.
Never mind the fact that even the source materials in the case of Steve Gerber actually wanted, envisioned the character in Tron to be more adult-oriented.
I won't be surprised if Marvel ever makes like a Howard the Duck Disney Plus show or something, that they make some kind of jab at the
possible.
I mean,
really
hey,
sorry.
Oh my God, Pedro! It's funny you mentioned that because Mandalorian actually referenced the Star Wars Holiday Special of all things.
Well, for as much as George Lucas tried to erase it from history, it is
It only noticed that the Barbara Streisand effect.
I don't think
it is a canon part of the Star Wars continuity.
No blood for emotion.
No blood for emotion. That's the emotion too. Is that yellow goo?
Oh, okay.
The basic has to do with the lamb, and we'll get more into details about that in the climax of Gears 2.
All right, commanders.
Or you can read the 1,001 comics that were made out of this franchise.
Wow, this franchise had a lot.
You know what? To bring this back into topic, allow me to start a rant. I recently finished Gears 3, and it was a really good game with a really good ending. I just wish I didn't have. There's so much backstory that the characters even reference in the game that has to be read. That you have to read comics to fully know.
Yeah, I should probably mention Gears of War was made in
the gap between each games of the original trilogy.
Gears of War was made in, let me say, a golden age for video games. It was sort of a dark age in regards to cross media.
Well,
in
no,
the sense
Joe, I
that
didn't ask that. I just asked the actual time gap between each title.
oh, that.
Gears 3 takes place 2 years after Gears 2.
No, you mean development or in the universe? I'm talking about the development, IRL development. How many years did it take to make?
All three games were developed one right after the other. Well, they came out in 2006, 2008, and 2011. Too. It's a pretty...
So 2-3 year gap each. I wonder if the comics were actually made to, spruce something between the time.
Yeah.
I guess, but at the same time, Tail. See, here's the thing. Silly me, I bought the trilogy, and I wanted to just enjoy the games on their own. And after doing some research, I found out that, for example, and trust me, I'm not spoiling anything because what I'm about to say is not ever actually told in the games themselves. So technically, I'm only spoiling the comics, not the games. For example, Tail, you know Anya?
Anya Stroud, Mission Control.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Yes, Anya Stroud, Mission Control. Basically, Tail, even though she's our control communications girl in the first 2 games, and she's also a side gear character who even takes up a gun and helps out in the 3rd movie. Did you know, Tail, that that Marcus and Anya have a past together, and they have this whole entire romantic backstory that is only told to us in the comics, and
cool,
we have to...
I guess.
That's the thing, Tail. But then at the end of Gears 3, we have a big payoff moment with that, and I could not for the life of me feel nothing because I didn't see any of that.
Again, cool, I guess. Honestly, when it sounds like that, it sounds bad. It's not something that I would care in the
Okay. Let me put the things into perspective here. The 2 have a son by Gears of War 4.
No, yeah, the JD is people know about the JD, Joe. But see, okay, let me just ask you this too, and this is an honest question. I'm not even mad or anything.
Go on.
What was wrong with the way we did it back in the 90s, where we just bought a game, we played the game, we enjoyed the game, and we were able to enjoy the game entirely, 100%, without the need to read, watch, or play anything else outside of that game?
Wait,
what's wrong with that method?
Wait. Pardon me. Are you sure we were talking about the same 90s? You know, if I recall correctly, the 90s had a lot, and I mean a lot of tie-in material for games.
One of the main things of the games of back then is that half the story was usually told in the manual.
Okay, fine. Let me rephrase that. Like, for example, let's take. Okay, let me put it like this. For example, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, how about this? Okay, so we have to do a lot of comics to read a lot of comics to fully understand the lore and the backstory of these games. Fine. Okay, now let me ask you this: what was wrong with the way the Metal Gear series does it, where I don't have to read any side material to understand the stories? What was wrong with that?
Wasn't Metal Gear ahead of its time?
You have to read the side mission to know about Metal Gear 1 and 2, which back then weren't available for general public.
True, but at least they put the sum ups in Metal Gear Solid 1.
You still needed them, though.
True, but to be fair, that was okay. That's like one example, but you know what I mean, though. Why can't I just buy a game and enjoy the game entirely without having to do homework before I can properly fully enjoy the story?
Well, okay, here's the question. Maybe sort of a question instead. What does make you determine that the thing that is told in the side material is good enough for you to wish it was in the main game?
Everything. I want everything in the game. It doesn't even matter what it is. If there's story to be told, tell it in the game.
Well, in that case, that eliminates the idea of having side material to begin with, doesn't it?
Well, I'm fine with side material. Just make sure it's superfluous to the games themselves.
Well, in that case, it eliminates the purpose of having a side material. Again, it walks through that line. Either it contains material which should have been in the game, making it, something to not like about because it's telling material that it's should be in the game, or it's superfluous. Wherefore, what's even the point of having actually to read it?
Okay. There's definitely a fine line in between the two. I go, okay, I'll say this right now. Something should have enough in it to the point where you don't just have to make assumptions about it in the plot, or, oh, I have to read up on this to get more about a character's character here or there.
Like Rogue One.
Yeah, like Rogue One. It's like, I can see where Pedro was coming from in some regards here. Like, the thing about Gears of War is, like, it was made in that time where gamers were all about the cross... Well, not so much gamers, but game companies were all about cross-media. You had stuff like the tie-in comics, which would tell you vital stuff about what happened in between games here and there, and whatnot. Like, it was where game franchises were getting very franchise-heavy. I know that may sound like an oxymoron, but it's more so in the sense where the franchises were all about the cross-media and stuff here and there. Again, a way they haven't exactly aged the best, and it's a shame they didn't add in cutscenes.
Yo, what's up? Gotta be close to those power lines. Can you see anything up there? I think so. Just up ahead, across the park by that old theater. We'll move out and get Jack to start the repairs. We'll meet you at the power lines.
Oh, snap.
Oh, shit.
Game time indeed.
Anyway, comrades, I've got good news and bad news.
What?
Again?
Yes, good news is I have found some rations.
Are you sure it's not rotten food? Lives, this is not a beat 'em up. Picking up food on the ground is not the best option.
I found some crisps and sweets in an abandoned 24/7 place.
I'm sure they're totally good to eat and not possibly tainted.
Well, do you want to know the bad news?
They're tainted, aren't they?
Nope, they're all mine and you can't have it.
Oh no, how will I ever cope? You eating food off of a dirty, dirty, dirty surface that is possibly riddled with germs.
We've been doing that since the apocalypse started.
Hey, excuse me, I'm not a barbarian. I make sure that my stuff is cooked properly first.
You made us eat maggots while you were sitting back eating a steak.
No. I did no such thing, mister. That was you insisting to do it for the rations. Even though I told you that stuff needs to be properly filtered and cleaned first.
Filter with what exactly? A sieve?
The portable cleaning kit that were each issued. Come on, man.
We use that to wipe the venom off our hands.
You used that. I just took a bath. It was actually...
There's no running water.
Please, that's what rivers are for.
But all the rivers are tainted with poison and toxicity.
Yes, like the rivers in the desert, as Persona 5 pointed out.
But Persona 5 is a lie.
That's blasphemy, sir.
I like Persona 5, but there are some parts of that game that are just blasphemous, or at the very least lies.
Well, of course, yeah, Akechi is
religion. Of course it has to be blasphemous.
Well,
maybe Royale will fix upon them.
Well, okay, we'll put it this way. As long as it gets rid of that stupid shit where where the cat was constantly taunting Ryuji, but Ryuji does it once and the cat's like, oh no, fuck you all, I'm leaving. Yeah.
Anyway, let me answer Pedro. Simple, Teo. Here's what you do. You want to have side material? That's fine. However, all I'm asking is that when I pay a $60 game, I want the full experience and not have to go back and buy side stuff, so I can properly have side material, but have the side material tell exactly what the side material should do. Tell side stories. The concept of side stories is that you tell stories that are parallel or additional and add extra lore and extra character to the overall mythos. However, you keep the main focus of the mythos, the main characters and everything involving the main characters, on the main branch of the cross-media franchise, in this case, the games.
Pretty much what the expanded universe was before Disney killed that up, essentially. Extra stuff.
That's a good example. Exactly, because one of my main issues with the prequels was that there was, at least from what I've been told, apparently a lot of the stuff that is not explained in the prequels is explained in the expanded universe. And I never really got into the expanded universe because that's the thing. Remember, a lot of comics and stuff like that were not really sold in my country, so it was kind of hard for me to really go full into the expanded universe stuff. So it was kind of hard for me to do.
That is definitely one of the double caveats of having stuff with a lot of tie-in material. It's like, well, there are certain parts of the world where that extra tie-in material is not easy to get.
Like for example, the Professor Layton movie Eternal Diva, it tells a side story that while it technically adds more lore and even does technically fit into the villain, into the big plan as a whole, and even Miracle Mask does slightly reference it. You're not obligated to watch that movie. You will not be missing out on important key backstory of characters or anything. It's just a little extra side story that you can watch if you want a little more Layton. You know, like that's all I'm asking. Just be smart with your side material. Is supposed to be exactly what the name implies: side stuff, not complements to the main stuff. Side stuff that is self-contained, but at the same time works together with the main stuff in just expanding the franchise.
Doesn't that risk? Oh no, I'll say it after the cutscene. Again?
Oh boy!
Oh Jesus!
That guy doesn't give up.
Oh, I love this one.
He's competent. I'll give him
Jesus,
that.
Well, that's the plan. We're supposed to get his attention.
Yeah, two has to be bait, basically.
Don't worry, Dwebs. The Coal Train was born for this.
Yeah, Mario's like, fuck my life. No,
Does
what
the
I was
Coal
asking
Train
is,
survive this game?
doesn't that brings the risk of creating the opposite effect? That you make the side product good enough that you instead wish, oh, what the hell was it doing? But you wish instead the characters created specifically for that effect would actually be given a bit more dignity in a sense and actually be incorporated in the mainline, but by their nature they can't.
Well, of course. I mean, we have plenty of examples of that.
Well, okay, no, I would bring an example, but no, it's not too fitting, so I'll bring something else.
Well, I don't like once again bring up the example. I mean, I don't think there's any latent fans, at least that I've seen, clamoring for the characters of Eternal Diva to be brought into the main series. Like, it's just one of those things where, sometimes, like for example, the side material usually tells the specific story of that specific character, and that story has been told. There's no reason to revisit that character again because his or her story has been told.
That is the ideal scenario, but more and more I've seen recently that not just side material, but even main material in general, make sure to always try to keep an open end towards characters so they can potentially show up in the future, but that creates a double-edged sword in a sense that if said characters do not show up in the future anymore, if they feel incomplete as a result.
If the writers know what they're, if the creative head of the franchise knows what he's doing, that usually can stop. Like, you can avoid that problem. Like it's one of those things where when I pay $60 to play a game, I want to play a game that feels like a complete product and not a game that feels like it was left incomplete just so I can buy side material so I can properly understand everything, you know. Like, it just feels very money greedy to me on like that kind of practice, to be honest.
I think a good example.
Have you actually consulted with the Gears fan base and tried to think what they think in general? I'm pretty sure the answer may be.
Oh no, the Gears fans in general, yeah, Gears fans in general don't mind that. Don't get me wrong. I can only speak for myself too. I cannot speak for other.
Well,
Gears
true, but I can imagine someone who enjoys these franchises will will still have some problems.
Oh,
in
cutscene.
every part of it told in the comic.
Hold on.
Plus, there's a triangle, there's a monster yelling in my ears.
That doesn't sound good. Think we can still make it in time?
If we don't, we're gonna spend the rest of our lives running from shit like this.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that now, would we?
Come on, Marcus, you
Aren't
just
you
want
already
a
doing
hug.
No. From what I've been able to gather too, Gears fans tend to not mind the comic stuff because they don't. The story aspect of Most Gears fans, while they do like the story aspect of this series, they always say that the multiplayer is where it's at. The multiplayer has always been the favorite aspect of these games for most Gears fans.
Okay, I'll give Gears... And I'll give Gears of War free credit. While, yes, it is missing some crucial elements, for the stuff it focuses mainly on, it's got good enough foundations here. I'd say the only thing that could have used more work, or, is of course addressed in tie-in stuff, is the romance of certain characters. But other than that, it feels like for the most part it sustains stuff well.
It's just because one of those things where, like, for example, Gears 3 explains why Marcus is in jail at the beginning of this game. And that's fine. Okay, and it's a very effective flashback sequence that works really well, and it's really good. But then you... Okay.
And he's behind them, isn't it? Yeah, in front of them.
Well cried! Wow, the brumak had such a good hiding technique of just standing there.
It's a fucking giant Godzilla monster. How do you even notice that?
Well, just ask Rowan Emmerich. His Godzilla somehow managed to vanish into thin air.
From Manhattan.
Yes, New York, the city that never sleeps.
Is New York the population so so taking their business? Maybe they don't notice giant monsters roaming around.
Well, apparently...
Island had that problem.
Well, Tio, apparently according to Italy, New York cannot notice a giant talking octopus outside the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, true. So... Anyway, it is true. But then, that's the thing, Joe, but then we, like, for example, the climax of Gears 3 is fantastic in general. It's just that, like, when we have moments like we have scenes with Marcus and his dad in Gears 3 that outright reference past history that is told in the comics, where they're talking about, I'm sorry for this, Marcus, blah, 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 blah. And it's stuff that I have no idea what they're talking about because I haven't read the comics. And as a result, it creates this disconnect where I cannot connect with the emotion the scene is conveying because I don't have enough information. That's
I think it's also important the sequence of events, knowing if the comics were created after the null accident by the context of the games were referenced then, in a sense of instead having some writers filling in an actual hole instead of actually creating an event that then later got referenced by.
That is a good point. Were the comics made before or after that?
Well, no. I theorize that they've been spread across the years between the gap in each game.
From what I've been able to gather, yes. Here's another problem, by the way. It can cause a problem for the games in the long run, because imagine someone like me playing these games for the first time 10 years after the fact, and I bought these games on the store because they were on a sale and I wanted to try them out, and I have no idea about these comics, so imagine 20 years from now, someone who buys a Gears of War HD collection or something, and technically there's a Gears of War. The point is a Gears of War remastered collection, and it's a completely new audience who was not even aware, who was not even around when these comics were released. This is going to be you can see where I'm going with this. This is going to become a problem in the long run for these games.
It's like I said, it's definitely
itself, I suppose, but considering how the accessibility of the internet is already by now, I can imagine that in a couple of days it will be even more easier, getting material that, that even nowadays may be a bit difficult to, get.
I think part of the issue with that is companies tend to have that mentality, which means that it's more work for the actual consumer to have to piece together the story. And don't get me wrong.
That I actually can agree, Jova.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And there's some people out there. I know that some people out there might say, "Oh, come on, Pedro, are you really that lazy?" Yeah, I really am that lazy, aren't you? I mean, I don't want to do any work for my entertainment. That goes against the whole purpose of entertainment.
It's sort of one of the issues I have with the Kingdom Hearts series as a whole. It's like, well, I still love Kingdom Hearts, but I won't deny that when you have literally Japanese exclusive stuff that, thank goodness, people have to post on YouTube just for people to watch, and that's literally hours and hours of story. Houston, we may have a problem here.
Anya, do you read? There's Anya. There you go.
Must be a seed.
Sorry, couldn't catch that.
Interference, honey.
Okay.
Don't worry, Theo. It's just command. We're doing
No,
this.
no, no.
we're-
What you were saying, the last bit.
Oh.
Oh, that I was saying. I'm aware that some people on the comics may say, "Oh, come on, Pedro, are you really that lazy?" Yeah, I really am that lazy. I mean, like, I don't really want to work to fully enjoy my entertainment. That goes against the whole purpose of entertainment. I go for entertainment to rest from work that I already do.
Well, it's like I said myself. It's like, well, it can really take one. Well, actually, it literally can take one out of the story if they have to read the story up to a certain point, pause, then look at another source of material to get the proper context to something. And granted, maybe they don't always need the context, but when it's something that, you know, you literally have no idea how they did it, this or that, or if you don't actually get this character's character, it can feel a bit immersion breaking. Now, granted,
I'm
if you
okay
don't
with
care about
lore.
that sort of stuff, then you're still good and set. The thing is that there's a lot of people who actually do care about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm okay with lore being told to us inside material. That's fine. Lore, as long as the most important assets that we need to know are still, which they are in this game. Like, there's a lot of Gears lore. There's a lot of lore about Sarah that is told to us in the comics. That it's not so much a problem. I'm okay with that. It's when entire backstories of certain characters are in the comics and then are then referenced in the games, and the game says, "Yeah, I hope you've read this comic." That's when I have a problem.
It's like I said, this was definitely made in that era where gaming had a lot, and I do mean a lot for the time, cross-media franchise, to the point where, yeah, it was the norm.
Aside from Japan, I don't. This is a Western example. I don't remember outside of Japan any particular egregious example.
Well,
You know,
okay.
actually a big
Okay, here's the thing.
Let's not forget the Japanese exclusive Final
Or,
Fantasy
or
14 novels.
that's why I said that Western examples seems to be
Okay.
weird for me.
Allow me to
I can't
explain.
think
When
of
it
any maybe no, I don't think even Halo had that.
actually Halo did have that. In fact,
No,
even
I mean on this level of disparity.
well, it depends on your perspective. But okay, when it comes to stuff, okay, Nintendo was of course the odd man out. They didn't really do this because, well,
Zelda,
it's
I
Nintendo.
remember the Zelda has some manga adaptations, but that's literally
But
there's some
yeah.
minor adaptation with some changes here and there.
It was mainly with Sony and Microsoft where stories were starting to get, a lot more quote-unquote story-heavy to the point where they couldn't fit all their story in the game, so they either chose to either tell them across many installments or, tell them in tie-in material here. It was a very weird era of gaming where, people wanted to fit a lot more into games, but they couldn't find the proper time to. So, in some ways, they would compensate with cross-media. And, of course, the company had thought, hey, we can totally take advantage of that. And take advantage of that they did. It varied from stuff like adding on more lore to, yes, adding in tie-in material. It was a time before the internet had really blossomed and prospered as well. So basically, if you didn't know those details, heck yeah, you had to buy this extra stuff because the internet wasn't exactly doing as good a job as it does nowadays, having that tie-in material stuff explained in a wiki or whatnot.
I personally, I really love the way Level 5 does it with Inazuma 11 and Yokai Watch, in the sense that both there's anime, there's the manga, and there's the video games, and all three branches tell the same stories, some slightly differently with their own little ticks, but they're essentially the same stories, and they still end up to the same thing. Like for example, like for example in Yokai Watch, when you have the first movie, which is basically a summation of the plot of the second game, the main plot specifically. Obviously the side quests and side stories are not put in the movie, obviously, because runtime, but it serves nice for those who may have, let's say someone who doesn't care for the battle system of Yokai Watch but still likes the story. They can watch the movie and they'll get the movie and they'll still have the same basic information that the game players have. I actually particularly like that for that particular aspect where there's slight differences between each branch. Like the manga, for example, the Yokai Watch manga also has its own unique little take on the same stories, but they're still the same stories. So you don't need to go out of your way to read every manga and play every game and watch every movie. But you could, so, like, if you stick with one of the branches, you'll still get the basic gist of it. Yes, there's some, like, for example, obviously there's stuff in the anime that doesn't happen in the game, because, well, it's an anime that has hundreds of episodes, obviously it needs its own original material. But it's mostly just self-contained little storylines that are not required for anything else, so they work fine enough. I actually really like the way they know how to handle their cross-media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Pedro, just to know, the people tell you to shoot at the walls. Where are you supposed to do that? Oh, there, the supports. Okay.
That's the thing too. It's interesting you mention that because I had to jump cut because I myself got confused like you just did because they say shoot the walls. Okay, what specific part of the walls? It's those little round things. Okay, I kind of wish you had been a bit more specific because shoot the walls can literally mean anything. There's like
you have to.
Only because you were taking a bit of time. Ideally, if I was in the situation, I would have tried the surface until I got it.
But Pedro,
that's what you did.
Pedro, don't you see? In order to know that, you have to read the side material.
Of course.
Okay, now that would be just silly.
Fortunately not. No, fortunately it's just the game not delivering enough conveyance.
Although,
Gears of War break down the walls.
although, you know, I could totally imagine that one boss sort of being like that, like, oh, you need to read the time material to know that his particular weakness was water.
Some particular PC games that had RPG elements into them kinda sorta had something similar to what you just said.
Oh, yeah.
Something like I distinctly remember that some of the Ultima games had some problems tied to this.
True. Very true.
Or some capacity.
There we go.
I think we got him, guys.
And by that we just put a simple, wooden plate on top of the hole. Here's hoping it holds.
Shut up, the game says it works. That's the thing too. This is going to be a running thing in the series. Every time we cannot use the Hammer of Dawn because we're indoors or we don't have the Hammer of Dawn with us.
To plug the thing.
We have to crush it with something. Like for example, in Gears 3, there's one where in order to kill a cedar, we have to drop an entire building on them.
Oh, okay. That seems to be more effective. But like I said, here we just politely covered the hole with a wooden plate. Pretty sure that thing can burst through it.
No. He's like, no, okay.
It just works too.
It's like, okay, you crushed me with a wall. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
Go ahead, Dom.
Action.
Dom.
Dom,
was
please.
interesting, Pedro. Come on.
Thank you, Dom. Oh, God.
That wall must have been really interesting.
It must have been.
Yeah, you see what I mean? The AI in these games is a bit derpy, let's just say.
Mika, literally, is they
You know what's the sad part, Jova?
What?
One of the primary complaints fans have with the
his name might as well be Der.
Over here. It's right there.
Oh, jeez.
Man, that thing has chased us everywhere.
Persistent, isn't he?
I was aiming at that robot that was chasing it.
Perfect.
It's called interference, darling.
The only way we can catch that train is with Anya's help. So re-establishing comlink is our top priority.
Well, technically, Fang never called Lightning Darling in that line. So.
Something.
The shippers pretend that it happened.
She says it's called interference, and that's literally all she says.
Really? She didn't say darling or honey? Huh.
No, she doesn't. That would only add more shipping fuel.
Lord knows that game had a truckload of it already.
Alright, everybody. See you in the next part.
See ya.